Alright, well, hello Minders. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor. This is going to be our last in a color mixing series on this set, Mind of Watercolor 10 color set. Now, I will continue probably doing painting demos and using these colors, maybe some others too. But this will be sort of the last in this series of going through the colors. And today we're going to look at the reds. That's sort of the last one I have left. We've already seen them brought into many of the mixes. And so if you're really concerned about what all these reds will do, you might want to make sure if you're seeing this for the first time, you go back and watch the whole series. You'll see these brought into play in a number of mixes. But today we're just going to feature them. Most of what you can do with them and their characteristics are fairly obvious, especially in the brilliant colors. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing the obvious things. I mean, you know, as you work your way around the outer part of the color wheel, the most brilliant part of the colors, or the most brilliant examples of the colors, you're just going to get brilliant mixes. You know, the dioxazine purple and the quinacridone rose is going to give you some nice violets, magentas. As you work your way this way, if you mix these two, you're going to get a nice proper red, like a fire engine red. As you take Scarlet Pyrrol and mix it with Indian yellow, you're going to get sort of a proper orange. And all of these, because of the way these colors are spaced on the wheel, they're fairly close. You've got some nice splits here. They're going to be very, very vibrant. So if you're into painting very vibrant things like flowers, that's going to be your wheelhouse, no pun intended, is out here. You know, your violets to your yellows. Pretty obvious mixing opportunities there and results that you can get. But like with some of the other colors, I want to talk about some of the hidden gems. And some of this may be redundant because, as I mentioned, we've covered how these come into play in other mixes. Well, let's just touch on a few. All right, so let's just get out the colors and put them on a little feature swatch here. And I want to show you the tints. Scarlet Pyrrol is a very nice red-orange, or orange-red. One of the things that's interesting about Scarlet Pyrrol, I use it a lot in flesh tones, in light skin flesh tones, because you tint it out, and it's almost a good flesh color. Again, light skin flesh, all by itself. And by the way, again, if you haven't seen a number of my videos, I have a video on mixing flesh tones, both light and dark, and all in between. So Scarlet Pyrrol is going to be a good base for flesh tones, light or dark. Before I go any further, let me just illustrate that. You know, you don't have two flesh tones, light skin people and dark skin people. You have ruddy to olive to, you know, reddish brown to deep kind of umber browns, cool browns. So there's a whole range, but this will get you 75 to 80% of there on all flesh tones, as you can see down here. See, if I cover that up, you're basically looking at a flesh tone, light skin Caucasian flesh tone. However, mix a little bit of, and I'll just come over here on the side, mix a little bit of red iron oxide with that, and you have a nice red brown. That's pretty intense still, but you've got the beginnings of sort of a nice middle dark skin tone. Take that same mix, Scarlet Pyrrol, red iron oxide, add a little bit of dioxazine purple to it, and you've got yet a darker skin tone. It's interesting because skin tones don't vary that much in terms of hue. They vary a lot in terms of value. Well, they will vary a lot in hue too, but as much as they vary in hue, you can just darken the value and basically illustrate the difference or create color the difference between light skin and dark skin people. So Scarlet Pyrrol tints out to a nice light flesh tone. Red iron oxide, more of an olive skin or middle flesh tone. Some purple, or of course, neutral tint. This is Scarlet Pyrrol, a little bit of red iron oxide, and neutral tint. And really, the more neutral tint you add, the more umberish and cooler the brown is going to be. So we're talking about earth tones, but I'm specifically talking in the realm of flesh tones. So you portraitists out there, Scarlet Pyrrole is probably going to be your go-to. So that's a good segue. Quinacridone Rose, we're going to put it over here as our other half of the split. Really nice ruby red. Quinacridone Rose exists in a number of brands, so you might be able to find it under that name. Brands will vary a little bit in their hue. I've seen ruby reds that look pretty close to this hue. It's not quite a magenta. It's a little more reddish than, say, a magenta. It's a really, really great mixing red, though. And this makes for a fairly wide split, but as you could probably see already, I like wide splits. So I find it very useful. And as I mentioned before on the color wheel, a mix of these two, and we'll go ahead and put that in the middle, it's going to get you a fairly standard fire engine red. This is going to be more of a quinacridone red. If you bend it this way a little bit, maybe more of a pyrrole red. But either way, you're mixing full intensity with these, and you're going to get some nice pinks. Let me just tint that out further. I like M Gram because of its intensity, as I've mentioned several times, which means you're going to get some nice pinks. Now, pinks are always, if you want really highly intense pinks, that's always a problem in watercolor. It's just the nature of the medium, because the more you tint, there is no pink unless you get some fairly non-light fast colors, like opera pink. When you do that, you're talking about dyes, which are not as light fast. Now, if you can get something that even has fair or, sort of middle good light fastness on something like a opera pink, as long as you take great care in your conservation of the art, the UV stuff, you can use an opera pink, but I'm not going to here to talk about opera pink. The pinks that you normally create are from these colors when they're tinted out. And again, you're adding white. By tinting them out, you're adding the white of the paper, which desaturates them naturally, but that gives you your pinks. Now you take dioxazine purple, of course, and you mix it. This is dioxazine purple and quinacridone rose, and you get a nice red violet. And of course, every hue in between, tinted way out. So those are your pinks. They tinted out versions of these full strength colors. But let's talk about some of the hidden gems. And we're going to use some of the same principles that we've already used. Darkening and desaturating or neutralizing by way of either neutral tint or complement. So let's take each of these outer two. The mix will be very similar, and see what we can do with a complement or near complement and neutral tint. I already showed you Scarlet Pyrrole. Now this is also mixed with transparent red iron oxide. Let's just take Scarlet Pyrrole straight up. Get out our mixing whiteboard here, also known as a butcher tray, and just go straight up with neutral tint. That's a nice little hidden gem right there that I want you to see. That could be used in flesh tones. Could be used in landscape, anywhere in between. That's almost like a perylene maroon. Let's watch that one. Really like that. I'm going to make that a little redder or a little oranger. That's a nice landscape color, I think. That's a nice dark flesh tone. Similar to these, only without transparent red iron oxide. So as we get quinacridone rose involved, let's go back to neutral tint. Oh, that's pretty. I love these gray violets, especially in landscape. I'm going to tint that one a little bit. Also kind of a perylene violet, but more violet than that. That's kind of looking earth tonish there. And just like I did here, I can make that a little more red and a little less neutral. Really pretty grade red violet. Maroonish, maybe close to a perylene maroon. We bring in some of the Scarlet Pyrrole. In other words, both reds and neutral tint. We've got something very similar again, to pyrrole maroon, maybe even alizarin crimson. If you get a little more red in there, trying to see if I can make an alizarin crimson, which that's close. It's not as intense as alizarin. Pretty darn close though. Just some beautiful grade violets, reds, and oranges. Keep in mind, if you do paint brilliant subjects like flowers, for instance, where you just want really brilliant colors, and these on this palette, these are going to be your colors. These are going to probably be your shadow colors. And so far, this is all done by neutral tint. I did use a little red iron oxide here, either with one color or the other, or mixing the two, and neutral tint. So let's talk about complements. The closest complement to Scarlet Pyrrol on this palette is going to be the phthalo green. All right, Scarlet Pyrrol and the magnificent phthalo green blue shade. Now that's a pretty close complement because I can nearly get a gray if I try hard. But since we're talking about the reds, let's keep it more in the Scarlet Pyrrol realm. Very similar to neutral tint. So really you can use whichever you like. I would be tempted to use a near complement instead of phthalo green. Maybe ultramarine, and mix that together very well so it's kind of variegated. Really interesting violet. And this is leaning heavily towards the ultramarine. If I lean a little more heavily towards the Scarlet Pyrrol, you know, I'm running out of names for these colors, and again, names are not important. But you see the range of hues you're getting, and that's just off Scarlet Pyrrol. Phthalo green as a complement, ultramarine as a complement, or a near complement. Love these colors. And this is what I'm talking about. You know, the obvious mixes here you can easily see on a color wheel, but these are the hidden gems. These are the treasures that you need to uncover. Let's do the same thing over here. Let's go to Quinacridone Rose and use a complement, which is going to be sort of a yellow-green. But I think what I'm going to do is, if I go here, I already know with Azo Green, Quinacridone Rose, I'm going to get a rust color. And that's fine. That's great to know if you're painting on the fly. You know, rather than go to red iron oxide, you can create a rust. But instead, let's go back to the phthalo green blue shade with Quinacridone Rose. So I already have some phthalo green here. Let's refresh that, re-intensify it. Bring the Quinacridone Rose. What do we have? Another really neat, brilliant violet. Let's go heavier with the green. There's a really pretty, cool gray. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I showed this in when you're mostly phthalo green. Now that's pretty grayed there because I still have a lot of Quinacridone Rose in there. You're getting close to a Prussian blue. Anyway, you're getting some nice grade greens, deep purples. Again, you know, I run out of words to name these colors, but they're just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Neutral tint or complements and near complements. I'm going to go ahead and show you the Azo Green. Let me go ahead and show you Quinacridone Rose and Azo Green. I'm getting a few other colors mixed in here, but essentially this is it. This gets back to our browns. So we're seeing some overlap in these mixing episodes. All right, so that was a quick one, but that just kind of highlights the reds. And again, it crosses over into some of the mixes I've done before, but just some real color treasures and gems there to be uncovered. You have a lot of great shadow colors in here where you're painting with reds, maybe for flowers. These are going to make some great shadow colors. Same with Scarlet Pyrrol. Scarlet Pyrrol is going to give you a really good base for some flesh tones, light or dark. You're going to be able to get your basic reds between the two of them. You're going to be able to do some interesting things with your greens and your blues. So there you go. There's some things to play with color-wise, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it so much. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support. I really appreciate it. We'll see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.